That's it, man.
Are we at a good height here?
It's fine.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to our off-campus forum regarding Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. We appreciate those who are allowing us to use their space, the Heritage Foundation, and we're grateful for those of you who are, I think a number of folks are live streaming this, and we have not just media, but we also have other individuals who are interested in this issue. Appreciate the members of Congress. We have some more coming. There is an oversight committee hearing that was going just blazing until it lost power. And so some of them are over there trying to wait for that to finish, and maybe they'll get over here, maybe not. But in any event, we have Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia's 6th Congressional, 14th Congressional District. You guys realign over there, pretty good. Who's with us, as well as Representative Bob Good from Virginia's 5th Congressional District, and I'm Andy Biggs from Arizona's 5th Congressional District. We welcome you, and we'll have others that come in, maybe coming in and out. We have an august panel of experts on the topic of border security. Tom, are you now with the Heritage Foundation, kind of? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because it says the Heritage Foundation, that's just, well, I'll introduce you. Tom Homan from the Heritage Foundation. And Mark Morgan, also from the Heritage Foundation. Robert Law from the America First Policy Institute, and Steve Bradbury from the Heritage Foundation. Rather, in lieu of me giving an opening statement, I'll say that, and I think we want to just, since there's rather sparse numbers up here, I think it would be best if we just kind of open this up into format, but give each of you an opportunity to make an opening statement, and then we'll go forward and give each of these guys a chance to kind of lead, and then I will reserve my statements and comments till the end, and we'll just interject. It'll get to be fairly free flowing. So let's start with you, Mr. Homan.
Well, look, I prepared a statement, you have that, so I submitted it to the record, but let me just talk from my almost 35 years of experience. I started as a Border Patrol agent in 1984. I've been enforcing immigration law for almost 35 years, under 6 different presidents. And I say that a lot because every president I've ever worked for took some moves to secure the border. Some did more advanced moves than others. No one did more than President Trump. But even Clinton and Obama took moves to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security without border security. President Biden is the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured a border with the help of Secretary Mayorkas. He inherited the most secure border in my lifetime, and data proves that. And they purposely unsecured it. This is not mismanagement, it's not incompetence. This is intentional. And because of this, you see what's happening now. I know Mark Morgan will speak a lot about this, because I'm going to go over to talk about ICE, but I just want to talk about this just for a second. So under President Biden, we keep hearing that they're going to create a more humane process than the Trump administration. However, under this administration, over 100,000 Americans have died. 1,700 migrants have died in U.S. soil since he took office. Record number of sex trafficking women and children. Cartels are making billions. No suspected terrorist arrests are at all-time high. We don't know what got away. 1.2 million don't got away. This is what this administration has done. So don't tell me they're humane. Because under the Trump administration, when illegal immigration was down 83% at a 45-year low, how many women weren't being raped by the cartels? How many children weren't dying in the river? How many Americans didn't die from fentanyl overdoses because the border was secure? How many non-suspected terrorists didn't make it into the country because the Border Patrol was vigilant on the line because the border was secure? That alone deserves impeachment for Secretary Mayorkas. In 2014, 2015, he was a deputy secretary. Mark is a chief patrol agent. I was 30 commanding ICE. We had a family search. Secretary Mayorkas, who was then the deputy, how do we stop it? We built detention facilities. We held people long enough to see a judge. 90% lost their case. We put them on an airplane and sent them home. And the numbers dropped significantly. What's Mayorkas doing now as a secretary? He's not detaining them, he's releasing them. Many have been released without court dates. And even if they get an order removal, which 90% will lose their case and get an order removal. They're not being removed. ICE isn't even looking for them. And I know that because, like I said, I was a director of rights, I have a lot of friends here, not even looking for them. Doing the complete opposite of what he knows works. That alone should cause his impeachment. If I look at interior enforcement ICE, Mayorkas created this memorandum. He's going to change their priorities of ICE to concentrate more on public safety threats. Understand during the Trump administration, 91% of everybody we arrested was a criminal. 9 out of 10, that's pretty good prioritization. What have they done since then? Let me read a few stats in the Obama administration. They claimed last year 143,000 at-large arrests. Nearly 100,000 were arrested by the Border Patrol. ICE just simply processed them. So the 143,000 arrests, wrong. If we look at the number of criminals they arrested, which is about 36,000, 25% of everybody they claimed they arrested was a criminal. What happened to the prioritization? Change their priorities to arrest more criminals. Trump administration, 91%. Biden administration, 25%. So it wasn't about prioritization at all. It's about shut down immigration enforcement. Detainers, issuing detainers on criminal aliens. 122,000 under 2020. Last year, less than 70. That's a 36% drop. Criminal arrests in 2020, 71,000. That's when the country shut down over COVID. ICE basically shut down operations for 7 months, but they still managed 71,000 criminal arrests. What did the Biden administration do this year? 36,000, half of what we did in 2020 when the country shut down. So I don't know what they're talking about prioritization, and prioritization wasn't really prioritization about shutting down immigration enforcement. Secretary Mayorkas needs to be impeached. If they can if they can impeach a president for making a phone call, they can certainly impeach a secretary who took control of the Department of Homeland Security, unsecured our border on purpose, that has resulted in a record number of Americans dying, a record number of migrants dying. He's not only ignored the law, he violated the law. We had federal judges that made that decision, he violated the law. I testified for several hours in Houston, Texas against the administration. We won. Judge Tipton said, not only are they ignoring the law, they're violating the law. That alone, our grounds for impeachment, and for that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Morgan.
Mr. Morgan, thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Tom. The premise of how this administration describes the intentional self-inflicted national security crisis is intentionally misleading. It frames the issue as simply an immigration issue, and we talk in terms of needing comprehensive immigration reform. Through all this rhetoric, the clear and distinct line between legal and illegal immigration have been intentionally blurred. The impact on our capacity to secure our borders and protect our national security has been all but dismissed. The exponential expansion of human suffering at the hands of the cartels, all but ignored. Lost in this knowing, willful, and misleading narrative is the truth. Our nation's compassion hijacked for political gain. The reality of what's happening at our borders and its impact to our nation is hidden from the American people. It's an orchestrated effort to cover up and deflect how they have obliterated every effective policy, made a mockery of the rule of law, and cast aside not only the enumerated duties contained within the Constitution, but its founding principles. They want the American people to forego common sense and believe that illegal immigration has no downside, that illegal immigration has no negative impact to our country or our ability to secure the borders. It's a dangerous, perverse, and deadly lie. As this administration gutted the policies in place, any semblance of deterrence or consequences fell by the wayside. The predictable result was a crushing volume of illegal immigration from 171 different countries from around the globe. Personnel at our borders became overwhelmed and forced from their enforcement duties, ceding large areas of operational control to the hands of the cartels, and enabling the cartels to increase their success rate of drugs, criminals, and potential national security threats pouring into this country. It's simple math. Fewer agents on the line results in increased volume of bad things and bad people getting through. And one constant for the past 2 years is the man who served as this administration's chief architect of their open border policies, Secretary Mayorkas. A man who is unbashful and defiantly transformed his position from a bipartisan protector of our nation's homeland, to nothing more than a frontman to peddle disinformation and lies on behalf of this administration. Mayorkas continues to opine our borders are closed. With more than 5 million total nationwide encounters, as Tom said, 1.2 million known gotaways in the first 24 months of this administration, there is no objectively rational person that would continue to assert that claim, let alone the Secretary of our Department of Homeland Security. He uses his position of influence to alter facts, downplay the severity of the crisis, and convince the American people that everything is under control. He provided intentional, false, and misleading testimony while under oath when being questioned by congressional members. When confronted with the statutory definition of operation control as outlined in the 2000 Secure Fence Act, which says in part that the Secretary shall prevent the entry of all illegal aliens, narcotics, other contraband, and potential national security threats, Secretary Mayorkas quickly said he in fact had operational control. At that very moment when that question was asked, the Secretary knew that CBP had confirmed the detection of hundreds of thousands of known gotaways the moment he said that he had operational control. That among the gotaways, Secretary Mayorkas knew there are untold numbers of criminals, including murderers, rapists, aggravated felons, gang members, the list goes on. He knew that for every pound of narcotics seized, potentially tenfold gets by us. And he knew that the moment he lied to Congress and says he has operational control of our borders. It's a lie. He's eroded the public's trust in our system of government as he's refused to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and shown contempt for our nation's judicial branch. He has willfully violated, as Tom said, mandatory screening, removal, and detention requirements. Openly and unabashedly bragged about how his policies prevent an alien's legal status to be used as the basis of removal. He's enacted mass parole operations in contradiction of the state's clear intent and used an umbrella of organizational priorities to forbid agencies from fulfilling their statutory enforcement mandates to protect this nation. Secretary Mayorkas, he's abused his position as he continues to push massive disinformation campaign regarding the realities of the human suffering and tragedies thrust upon us as they've all heard the call to action to come. As the numbers of illegal migration continue to expand, as Tom mentioned, so do the number of young women and children being sexually assaulted, those being forced into the life of trafficking, and those that have died. In the past 24 months, somewhere between 1,500 to 1,700 dead migrants have been recovered by CBP along our southwest border. And that doesn't include the number of migrants that died in Mexico on the journey or the dangerous and inhospitable Darien Gap. 325,000 unaccompanied minors made the decision to self-separate from their families, many experiencing unimaginable acts of violence on their journey. Yes, Secretary Mayorkas, in his response, he's told us that he's developed a safe, orderly, and humane system. A lie intended to distort and cover up the horrific brutality endured by the very migrants his policies have encouraged to come and put themselves in harm's way. As long as cartels exist and U.S. policies that expand their criminal operations, there will be no humanity. Secretary Mayorkas ignored our warnings, dismissed career border security experts, abandoned his oath, lied to the American people in Congress, has cast aside the rule of law and the Constitution. He's betrayed the public's trust in our system of government. His legacy will be one of deception, misinformation, and a man who oversaw the worst border security crisis in our lifetime. Through incompetence or driven by ideology is of no moment. The American people deserve a Secretary of Homeland Security that will be holding to the oath of office, the rule of law, and the Constitution, rather than a self-serving political agenda or personal ideology. How many more Americans and migrants have to die before we say enough is enough? And I'll end with this. This is not about a policy difference. This is about having a Secretary of Homeland Security that will enforce the Constitution and uphold the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I want to, you see the passion in Mr. Homan and Mr. Morgan, former acting director, vice Mr. Homan, former acting director, CBP, Mr. Morgan, a lot of passion. Thank you. And now we have Mr. Law, former senior policy advisor, chief of policy at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services under the Trump administration, now director the Center for Homeland Security and Immigration at American First Policy Institute. Thank you for being here, and we'll turn it over for 5 minutes for you.
Great. Thank you, Congressman. Those who know me well know that I'm also known for my passion, so I just got to build up the reputational acumen as my colleagues over here.
All right.
The last 24 months have been catastrophic for our country, most notably the humanitarian crisis at our southern border. 2 years ago, thanks to the America First immigration policies of the Trump administration, we had the most secure border in Tom Homan's lifetime. I would say my own, he's got a couple more years on me, so I thought it was more impactful. Those of us who served in the Trump administration at the Department of Homeland Security implemented across-the-board policies to deter illegal immigration, disrupt the cartels, and enforce the rule of law. We succeeded by listening to and empowering Border Patrol agents to give them the tools they needed to secure the border. But when the Biden administration took office in January 2021, all this hard work was undone. The successful Trump-era policies, including Remain in Mexico and asylum cooperative agreements, were terminated. There was a 100-day deportation freeze and no introduction of new policies to deter illegal immigration. Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is the architect of that destruction. As the first administration of either political party to openly refuse to enforce our immigration laws, the drug cartels and human smugglers found a complicit partner to fuel their heinous business of trafficking migrants and flooding American communities with fentanyl, which is now the leading cause of death of Americans aged 18 to 45. Secretary Mayorkas has overseen the 2 worst years of border apprehensions ever recorded. Over 4 million illegal aliens, that's not counting the gotaways that have already been mentioned, and is responsible for the 6 highest individual months ever recorded in 8 of the top 10. Because of Secretary Mayorkas, the cartels now generating $13 billion a year, up from $50 million not that long ago. After the September 11 terrorist attacks, DHS was created to secure the homeland and protect our nation's citizens. Yet the actions of Secretary Mayorkas have done the opposite, eroding our institutions and diminishing the rule of law. He has violated his oath of office, lied to Congress, and jeopardized the safety and well-being of the American people. Make no mistake, Secretary Mayorkas is doing this deliberately. By no stretch of the imagination is he new to Homeland Security. From 2009 to 2013, he served as the director of U.S CIS, and then as the Deputy Secretary of DHS from 2013 to 2016 under the Obama administration. He is directly aware of the consequences of record-setting levels of illegal immigration and the damage his policies cause. Secretary Mayorkas is acutely aware that the illegal aliens apprehended at the border are economic migrants exploiting the asylum system as a means of being released into the country. He knows that only around 15% actually qualify for humanitarian relief, yet he mischaracterizes them as, quote, asylum seekers, a term that has no legal meaning in U.S. immigration law. Instead of implementing a strategy to discourage this asylum fraud, Secretary Mayorkas continues to focus on processing as many illegal aliens into American communities as possible. What he calls safe, orderly, and humane is actually dangerous, corrupt, and inhumane. Secretary Mayorkas' latest smoke and mirror scheme is to abuse the narrow parole authority to hide the visuals of the chaos unfolding at the border. This is not a new legal pathway, but a diversion of illegal aliens from between ports of entry to the ports of entry. Our great country cannot handle another 2 years of this devastating border crisis. The American people deserve far better leadership than what Secretary Mayorkas has demonstrated in the past 24 months. He's not the right man for the job, and he needs to go.
Thank you, Robert. And now, Steve Bradbury, former General Counsel of the U.S. Department of Transportation, just this week published a piece. I see one of your co-authors, Hans Van Spakovsky, here with what is entailed for an impeachment position paper regarding Secretary Mayorkas. And so, with that, I'll give it to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Representative Biggs and distinguished members of Congress, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today on an issue of great importance to the American people. As you mentioned, Congressman, together with 2 colleagues of mine from the Heritage Foundation, I published a special report explaining the constitutional foundations of impeachment and examining the policies, actions, and statements of Secretary Mayorkas that we believe warrant an impeachment inquiry. Our report finds 3 categories of grounds for the House to consider potential articles of impeachment. First, we conclude, Secretary Mayorkas has violated his oath of office by repeatedly contravening the laws he was sworn to enforce. Second, he's abused the powers of his office through reckless conduct that threatens the sovereignty of the United States and puts at risk the safety and security of the American people. And third, he's betrayed the public trust by making false statements to Congress and misleading the public about the nature and effects of his policies. From his first day in office, Secretary Mayorkas has unleashed what I like to refer to as a great magnetic force, attracting millions of human beings to our southern border, generating a humanitarian catastrophe and an immigration disaster of unprecedented proportions. He has put all Americans in danger of violence and crime and has enabled a major influx of deadly drugs, including record volumes of fentanyl, devastating our communities and giving the Mexican drug cartels huge profits, greater control of our border, and stronger networks for extending their influence throughout the United States. His policy of using parole to release tens of thousands of aliens en masse into the U.S. each month violates INA Section 212 and circumvents the established procedures for refugee admissions. There's no way to know how many of the millions released into the U.S. fall within the categories of dangerous aliens who by law are not allowed entry. He's also ignored the mandatory detention and removal requirements of INA Section 235, and his directions to ICE not to take enforcement action against most deportable aliens defies Section 237. Under his watch, deportations have fallen to historic lows. In recent weeks, the flood of illegal aliens crossing between official ports of entry has slowed somewhat, as DHS has shifted to a process of pre-registering aliens outside the U.S. for mass entry and release using the CBP-1 mobile app. In legal terms, this process only institutionalizes the violations of law by establishing a new channel for attracting and enabling an ever-increasing stream of illegal immigration. Secretary Mayorkas is asserting a sweeping power to suspend the immigration laws, which cannot be justified as an exercise of enforcement discretion. His own actions have caused the crisis, and he's refused to employ the full scope of the department's available resources, shuttering detention facilities and ending all cooperation with border states. In requiring that they carry out their legal duties faithfully, our founders rejected any notion that executive officers could suspend the laws they're sworn to enforce when, as here, there's no argument those laws are unconstitutional. Impeachment, we can all agree, is not the right response for mere policy disagreements. But when the principal officer entrusted with enforcing the nation's immigration laws systematically refuses to uphold the requirements of those laws and assumes an unlimited power to suspend the law, he has usurped the role of Congress. And that goes well beyond an exercise of policy discretion. And when that officer misleads Congress and the public and abuses the powers of his office so recklessly and flagrantly, we find ourselves in a realm far removed from any simple policy disagreement. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. We appreciate that. We're going to proceed this way. We'll yield time to Mr. Good first, Ms. Green, Mr. Rosedale, Mr. Gates. Mr. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Biggs. Thank you for once again arranging this for us on this most important, perhaps all topics that we can discuss. Been to the border 5 times. I recognize Virginia is geographically not a border state, but it's effectively a border state, as many of you could illustrate better than I could. I've been 3 times with Mr. Biggs, has arranged trips, and then a couple of times to Texas. And I forget if it was Mark or Tom, but one of you were alluding to this, the willful, intentional nature of it. And you find yourself a little, I think all of us are on impeachment articles, at least in the last Congress, if not yet in this Congress, on the president, in addition to Secretary Mayorkas. And of course, you're a little conflicted in the sense that you know he's carrying out the policies of his boss, who left to their own devices would replace him with someone who would do the same. But that said, it's rare could we point to in history where our own president has intentionally tried to harm the United States. I don't know. We would struggle to come up with many examples of when our own president has tried to hurt the United States, and there's no other explanation for it. Scariest words last night, 5 words were, "We got to finish the job." And you could apply that to a lot of things, where we haven't gone far enough to hurt the American people, but no more so than the border. When I asked Secretary Mayorkas, when I think it was Mr. Biggs, who also arranged him to come to speak to our border caucus, I said, what's the end game here? When is too much? When is enough too much, or when is it too much?
More agents, more judges, and then remove 59,000 with more resources. Don't lack resources. It's all shut down immigration enforcement. But the general reason, I think none. You got progressive left in open borders. That's just open. We shouldn't have borders. I really think they perceive a future political benefit. For a couple reasons, they think they're going to be future Democratic voters, which I don't know if I agree with that. But remember what President Biden also did? We signed in 90 executive orders abolishing everything we did. He also overturned the Trump census rule, which means millions of more people will be counted in the census, which is going to talk about reappropriation of seats with Congress. They seem they're going to get more seats in the House with Democrats. There's no other reason, as I said, to unsecure the border. They perceive our future political benefit. That's my opinion. I know Mark has opinions on this too.
Yeah, so real quick, so I don't see any inside. I don't see any inside of this administration's policies that acts as a beacon to the entire world to come here. None. In the first 24 months, they've had immigrants from 171 countries. There's only 195 recognized countries on the face of the planet. It's not going to end. And because I agree with Tom 100%, there's 2 very distinct perceived political benefits. And me too, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've served this administration in this country, multiple facets, both Republican and Democrat. I didn't get to this position, and my thought easily, because I didn't want to believe it. But at the end of the day, there's 2 perceived political benefits. One, illegal aliens are counted part of the census. So there's a very real, this isn't hyperbolic, redistricting the House seats in favor of the Democrats. Number 2, the second perceived political benefit, they do believe that every single illegal alien they find a pathway to citizenship is going to equate to a Democratic vote. Now, some people have said, well, the polls show there's Hispanics that actually want a secure border. Those are, from my experience, those are folks that came here and did it legally, right? But the ones illegally, it's a completely different game. And look, a lot of people don't want to touch this, and I get it, but these aren't my words. These are the words of our current sitting president during the campaign. What did he say? If you don't vote for me, you're not black, right? Those are his words. That's the most racist statement that I can imagine somebody saying. They're going to use that same context and that same leverage for those that came here illegally. People coming here right now, they want 5 things. They want to come to the country illegally, be free from deportation. They want to work here illegally, send money home, and bring family here. Guess what? This administration has given all 5 of those things. And now, what's their plan? Amnesty. This is all about politics.
Thank you. Now we'll yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Green.
First of all, that was the best laid case for why we need to deport all the illegal aliens that are coming into our country, and thank you for making that case. I want to ask you questions about the cartels and the gangs. These to me are some of the most dangerous threats coming across our border, and it's shocking to me. Just recently, there was a 20-year-old autistic woman in Maryland that was raped and murdered by a 17-year-old illegal alien and MS-13 gang member. there is a lot of evidence to suggest that many of these unaccompanied minors are coming into our country and they're already members of these gangs. And they are being spread across the country, selling drugs, helping in the human trafficking that the cartels benefit from. The cartels are making billions of dollars smuggling people and drugs into our country, and they are abusing the unaccompanied minors program. Could each of you speak to that and your knowledge in that area? And I'll start with you, Mr. Homan.
You're exactly right. And under the Trump administration, we did Operation Matador in New York, mostly on Long Island. We arrested just short of 500 gang members, most MS-13. After we got done the operation, we found that 42% of those gang members entered the United States as unaccompanied minor. So they are entering this country as gang members. And as far as the 250,000 children entered this country in this administration, and I just did an op-ed a few days ago. Senator Biggs did a great letter on how many HHS has lost track of. Veritas investigates how many these children were placed with unvetted sponsors. Just last week, they found 50 kids, children, in a meatpacking plant in Nebraska cleaning up entrails on a midnight shift. Now, I said in the beginning that many children will be victims of trafficking. Of course, I was called a fear-monger. I know evidence, but here we go. I just named 3 of them. My biggest fear is we're going to find some of these children are living with pedophiles, some of these children will be in pornographic movies, some of these children are in forced labor, and this administration opened the door. When you promise you won't be deported, you won't be detained, you get a work authorization, you get free health care. When the president says these things, the most vulnerable people in the world are going to put themselves in criminal cartels' hands and come to the United States. And they're going to be victimized. The latest parole policy, I just talked about this a couple of days ago. This opens up a whole new world for alien smuggling and human trafficking. You got to find a U.S. sponsor who's going to take care of you 2 years. There's going to be a lot of sick people in this country who will be willing to sponsor a young lady or a young man to come to this country as a sponsor, which actually gets her, they're going to be forced into some sort of labor or sexual situation. It scares the hell out of me. And you mentioned earlier, Congressman Biggs, about my emotion. If people saw what I saw in 35 years, they're emotional too, they understand this. Just 2 months ago, I was in South Texas. I was with the sheriff's department for 4 hours. In 4 hours, we found 2 dead bodies. Later on, we talked to a doctor. I want to share this story because I want you to understand why I get pissed off that this administration intends to open the border. We talked to the doctor, talked about my Nigerian family, father and mother, and a 20-month-old baby. They crossed the Rio Grande and started drowning. The men and women of the Border Patrol jumped in and saved those 3. Her other child later died. The postmortem autopsy showed that a 20-month-old little girl was sodomized in every opening of her little body by the criminal cartels as payment for crossing this border. This happens every day on that border. Someone's going to die tonight. Some young girl is going to get raped tonight. You ever talked to a 10-year-old who got raped multiple times? I have. And I'll never forget what the story I was told. The humanitarian crisis this administration created is killing people at record numbers. It's not migrants, but U.S. citizens. That needs to be the overshadow of why this administration needs to be held accountable and the secretary needs to be impeached. This country is less safe under his leadership, and massive amounts of people are dying. Not just migrants, but U.S. citizens too.
So real quick thank you for the question because we don't talk enough about this. Another thing you'll note, so Secretary Mayorkas, you've never heard a single story come out of his mouth that Tom just said.
No.
Not one, not a single one, right? Guess what else he never talked about? MS-13, Congresswoman, so thank you. I worked in MS-13 in Los Angeles, California as an FBI agent. I supervised the MS-13 gang task force. You know what their motto is? Rape, kill, control. That's their motto. So let's go back. 1.2 million known gotaways. U.S. Border Patrol agents, that's a joke. It's probably in excess of 2 million total gotaways.
Gosh.
In the same 24-month period, CBP has encountered over 72,000 criminals. 72,000 criminals, including 120 for convicted of murder. Thousands of those arrested for assault and murder. And thousands of gang members, including MS-13. on a daily basis that now call the United States home. From 2011 to 2022, 261,000 illegal aliens committed 433,000 crimes, including 800 homicides, 800 kidnappings, and 5,000 sexual assaults. And you know what the mic drop there is? That's the state of Texas alone. Yeah. How many times have you heard Secretary Mayorkas mention a family member, an angel family, whose mother or father buried their daughter that was raped and strangled? How many times have you heard him mention that? Zero. The president. What about that? Zero. There's a group out there called Avila, and they're the American families, victims of their loved ones that have been killed by illegal aliens. I too, Tom and I, right? I know you have. We talked to them. It's unbelievable. Yet you have this administration, you have this secretary say that he's developed a safe and orderly and humane process. For who?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'll just be very brief. Not only do you not hear Secretary Mayorkas talking about those families, he actually shut the office within ICE that was created to provide a service to American families that have been harmed by illegal aliens, and instead have flipped the narrative of that office and directed it towards providing care and resources to illegal aliens. That's just how morally deprived they are and who they view as their key constituency, which is illegal aliens, not the American people. I would just add from the U.S. perspective, look at the U visa and the special immigrant juvenile status. These are two programs that this administration is using to basically reward MS-13 and other gang members. They're not vetting these applicants properly. They're giving them work permits and possibly a path to citizenship. That is an area that is ripe for abuse and is kind of going under the radar a little bit because there's so many other things that are wrong.
Steve?
Thank you. The MS-13 member that you mentioned who murdered the young woman was 17 years old. That makes him technically a minor. From day one on the job, Secretary Mayorkas began publicly to announce that unaccompanied alien minors would not be turned away from our border. He welcomed all of them in as potential asylum seekers or humanitarian cases. As Tom mentioned, there have been over 200,000 unaccompanied minors allowed in through this policy, this intentional policy. It's impossible that all of them, probably very few of them, could have been vetted to determine if they were MS-13 members or other potential cases of threat to the safety of Americans. So that's an intentional policy, and this is the result.
And real quick, I'm sorry, to footstop Steve, it's such a great point. So it doesn't just apply to unaccompanied minors. Of the millions of adults he's let in, 171 different countries. Do you think that a single adult male from Uzbekistan, do you think we're able to get the equivalent of their NCIC check on this individual before it's released? No, it's BS. It doesn't happen. China, Russia. It's absurd to think that in less than 12 to 14 hours, which is about the process it takes to apprehend and release them in the United States, that we're actually getting any substantive, reasonable background on these individuals. We could literally be releasing murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and gang members into this country from 170 different countries, and we have no idea. That's why the law by Congress was written to detain, right? So we have some time to actually properly vet these individuals. So it's not just unaccompanied minors, and Stephen's right. He's literally told young people from around the globe, come in, lie, say you're 17, automatic passport in the United States.
One Border Patrol agent contacted me about 6 months ago who was on detail in Rio Grande Valley. True story about releasing people convicted of murder. He was processing somebody, found he had a conviction for murder. However, he also was COVID positive. He was ordered to release that person rather than putting him in a facility with COVID. Release a convicted murderer into the United States. Again, happens all the time.
Okay, I just want to follow up with one more thing. There's no data or any type of biometrics kept for these unaccompanied minors. Is that correct? Yes or no?
14. If you're under 14, that is correct.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously, that could be a problem. And they're joining gangs under 14. That's their purpose for coming in the country. Another thing, I've heard reports of women being found scalped. Is that gang related? They're dead and they've been scalped at the border. Do you know anything about that?
I have not heard a reporting of that.
Okay, more unreal violence happening at our border. Thank you very much. Definitely Secretary Mayorkas needs to be impeached. I also go further, President Biden should be impeached. And I appreciate your testimony, and I appreciate your service to our country, and I appreciate your expertise. Thank you.
Gentleman from Montana, Mr. Rosendale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Biggs. Thank you for organizing this meeting, and thank you all for coming in and testify today. It's a shame we can't have hearings like this right on site at the Capitol, but hopefully very soon we will be able to start scheduling this type of meeting. You have already shared a lot of really, really difficult information for a lot of people to listen to. The sad part about it is it's all the truth. Like most of the members sitting here, I've traveled to the southern border myself 3 times, started my first trip about 2.5 years ago, and the conditions have declined dramatically since that time. I can't imagine the ranchers in Montana having to worry about their property lines the way that the ranchers in Arizona, California, Texas, or New Mexico have to worry about, to go out and check their cattle and find not only their property destroyed, but dead bodies quite often out there on their property. The people across this nation, we have tried, many of us have tried time and time again to express to them that this is not humane. This is not a good thing for people that are trying to find a better way in their country, that the hundreds of thousands of people that are coming to our country each month are being tortured and tormented as they travel across the many miles to arrive there. And you have described in detail the horrific conditions, and I have listened to them as well when I went down to meet with these folks. When Mayorkas first came into office, he said, "Give me time. We've got a plan. Give me time. We've got a plan." And I was stating at that time, he has a plan, and he is exercising it right now before us. His plan is to completely eliminate any type of security on the southern border and to allow and promote as many people to come into our country illegally as possible. And now we are experiencing, not just on the southern border, but I know it pales in comparison, but we've had on the northern border, the illegal crosses go from 2,000 to 3,000 a year up to well over 100,000 illegal entries a year on the northern border. So people have discovered that we are not enforcing any kind of immigration law whatsoever, and they are coming in from everywhere. So I've got a couple of just really basic questions. As we have demonstrated and have shown that this is an intentional act by Secretary Mayorkas to allow all this illegal immigration to take place, do you feel that there is any way that this system under his direction could be rehabilitated? Now we can go right down the list.
Of course it'd be rehabilitated, it could be fixed.
Under his direction,
If he would reinstitute the Trump policies, it would change in 24 hours. But he has no intent. As I said from the beginning, he did have a plan. His plan's coming together perfectly.
Right.
Because he got a record number of illegal aliens coming across the border, and they're not leaving. Remember, at the same time he opened the border up, he shut down interior enforcement. ICE has the lowest number of removals in the same year of historic illegal immigration. The Secretary knows the same 2 data points I know, and that is this. If you go to immigration court data, 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border never get relief. Right. They either don't qualify or don't show up in court. So what happens to that 90%? They get order removal. What happens? According to the Secretary's Homeland Security Life Cycle Report, which grabs data from the last decade, about 6% leave. 6% of the 90%. So not only did they open the border up, they shut down immigration enforcement. He has said during the historic crisis, To be in the country legally on his own is not enough for ICE to be arrested. So these people are going nowhere. And here's the difficulty. When I was ICE director, I'd get called from Republican senators. Why'd you remove that person with 2 USC kids? Well, when he entered the country, he didn't have USC kids. He was ordered removed. He became a fugitive, went into hiding, had 1 or 2 USC kids. Now is he immune from that court order? Is he immune? And now we give him amnesty because he hid out successfully? If we continue down that road, you're never going to solve this crisis, which we're pressing. Don't even talk about amnesty right now. We got to secure the border, because if you talk about amnesty, this is a repeating cycle over and over and over again. Unless we have a system of consequences, deterrence like the Trump administration, this will not be fixed. So will be rehabilitated under this secretary? Absolutely not. He has no intent of fixing it.
So before we go on, let me ask that. So we also hear that it's going to be very difficult to identify where all the illegals are, as they've been basically distributed across the country by the assistance of the administration. But last September, Mayorkas announced his department's intent to do this. The rule to make public charge ground of admissibility, and by making this change, DHS will now grant taxpayer benefits to illegals while American people grapple with inflation, impending recession, and sky-high gas prices. So if all of the illegals are collecting benefits for health care, for education, for these things, wouldn't we be able to locate where they are as well and say, you're here illegally?
Yeah, it's funny. So, Congressman, I get, well, guys, now that we have all millions, how are we, going to start the process of deporting? Can't possibly deport them all. One at a time.
One at a time.
One at a time. That's how we start.
How do you eat an elephant?
That's right. That's exactly it. One bite at a time. And what I would say is, first of all, you're absolutely, on all the points, you're absolutely right. First of all, the plan is amnesty. Right? That's the plan. And it goes to the perceived political benefits. Number two, I'm glad you mentioned the northern border. Give an example. Swanton sector is part of the northern border. They've seen from year to year a 700% increase in illegal aliens come across. Right. A 700%. Now, we're focused on the southern border for obvious reasons, but our northern border is worse than our southern border. It has fewer personnel, it has fewer technology, and less infrastructure. And Canada is a significant threat to this country from two ways. One, and the U.S. intelligence community backs this up, is that Canadian homegrown violent extremists is a real threat. And they have to look no farther than the wildly northern border with respect to that. Second, obviously we share an extensive and expansive maritime environment in the northern border. You know the way it exists in the northern border right now? There's still some areas you can hop on a boat, come to the U.S. side, and self-report. Literally get on a dock and pick up a phone that's there and self-report. That's how secure the northern border is. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, how do we do it? How's the secretary do it? It's three-pronged, right? I know this is going to be crazy, but one, enforce the law. Two, apply consequences to those who violate it. And three, establish policies that are already on the books that acts as a deterrence, like ending catch and release. That's it. Now look, Congress needs to pass some law. So, but while that's going through the machine, the secretary could do those three things right now, and you would reduce about 75% of the problem overnight.
I've got one quick question, if I could, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to see that, if you could.
Real quick. Mr. Who developed, funded, and is servicing this, what we'll call the Illegal Alien app? Mr. Bradbury, do we know that?
Well, there is a question, as I understand it, of whether the secretary has appropriations through which he can fund some of these new actions, such as the CBP-1 process. I haven't looked into that question. But there isn't any question that he has the legal authorities and resources to enforce the law and stop the influx of illegal immigration. He has everything he needs, but he isn't doing it, and I think his conduct and record over the past 2 years shows he's completely unfit.
I would like to get some more information on this app, which clearly is helping to facilitate the illegal immigration, and maybe that's something for my friends on judiciary. Mr. Chair, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendale. I yield to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
Thank you for organizing this, a series of discussions we've had that I think lay the groundwork for the inquiries that are to come. And Mr. Homan, your testimony was not only chilling, it's haunting. It's almost hard to compose ourselves to ask questions after hearing about the human suffering and carnage that has been allowed to occur there. My question is about the business structure of the Sinaloa cartel. It still remains the largest and most powerful cartel, to my knowledge. Does Heritage or does AFPI give thought to the moment in time when Sinaloa is going to actually make more money moving people than moving drugs? How does that work?
Yeah, so right now, that's a great question. So just on moving people alone, it was a $500 million annual business profit for the cartels, and right now it's $13 billion. Just
That's really quite a deal of business growth.
Yeah, just people, not even talking about the drugs. The challenge now is because they've become so powerful and so lucrative, and they have so much operational control of our border, and they become TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now they're doing a lot more mixed loads, so they're smuggling drugs and people. So now their profit's just exponentially increasing because the border's wide open and they have free reign.
In our internal deliberations among Republicans, there's often a debate and a struggle about how much border security, how much internal enforcement, and then how much amnesty to kind of mix together into a legislative package. And my colleague, Mr. Biggs, has been the North Star saying that any amount of amnesty that you add to border security and internal enforcement not only dilutes, but actually turns on its head any productive effort. And so to the extent that anyone, those of you who've studied these cartels, how these caravans are formed, how does any feature of amnesty get internally communicated into these human trafficking networks? And then conversely, if there were to be real internal enforcement of our immigration laws, if we had an actual plan to deport the 1.2 million people with active deportation orders on them, how does that get then reported internally?
Let me give you a real quick example. I'll turn it over. So during the presidential debates, you remember that image when all the Democratic candidates, asked about, would you give free health care to illegal aliens? And they couldn't, they were pushing each other out of the way and raise their hand fast enough. In less than 24 hours, I had a video that was sent to me of smugglers engaging with migrants in Mexico saying, hey, look, showing them, actually physically showing the debate where all the Democratic candidates rose their hand for free health care and say, see, look, if you go to the United States, you'll get free health care. So their system, the cartels, my analogy is, or my comparison is that the cartels can teach a business class at Yale, at Harvard, at resiliency, flexibility, and a strong profit.
Human resources. We seem to always take out the top guy, and they've got an HR system that really repopulates pretty effectively.
That's exactly right. And so their ability to take weak, ambiguous, and changing U.S. policies and take that for their own messaging and convince it's very effective. We don't have to look any farther. Right now, 171 different countries.
And look, most companies have a public affairs office. They don't need one. They got Secretary Mayorkas and President Biden saying what they want to hear. When they hear the talk of amnesty, I'm sure last night the cartels are using the language from last night about future amnesty. And look, I've been around 35 years. Every time they talk about amnesty or DACA, the border numbers increase because they all want to get over here and take advantage of the system. The scary thing about the criminal cartels is we're the strongest nation in the world. We don't control our southern border. We have operational control of our southern border is in the hands of criminal cartels in Mexico. They decide what comes across, where it comes across, and what comes across. So they send a group of 200 people in one area to create a gap over here because whatever's left on the border, which 70-80% are already off the border processing, whatever agents over here are going to seize this humanitarian event, which leaves miles of borders open so they can run their drugs through. And I've talked to chief patrol agents. I won't mention them because out of fear they could get reprimanded. But one chief patrol agent used the term with me. I was talking on the phone. He says, Tom, it's broken arrow. I can't control what's coming across. I cannot capture more than 10% what's coming across. It's truly broken arrow. I'm overwhelmed, can't handle it. Criminal cartels run our southern border.
And Rob, sorry, I know.
You want to put something real quick?
Yeah, just real quick. Sorry, apologize. Just to give you an example of this, though. When I was commissioner during the height of the pandemic, the cartels took a playbook out of the terrorist organization around the world to win the hearts and minds of the people. They actually went out in Mexico and gave citizens care packages with actually the picture of the cartel leader on the bags of care goods. They're going out, so they are sophisticated. Sorry.
Yeah, I just had briefly look at the 1986 amnesty. Reagan's amnesty was supposed to be the last and only amnesty. You got the amnesty immediately, and all the enforcement provisions never went into effect, and the illegal alien population has exploded since then. You have to do the enforcement. The amnesty is a no-go, and as was previously mentioned, even the conversation of it becomes that great marketing campaign, because even if you don't qualify on paper for this one, you'll get the next one if you stick around in the country unlawfully long enough.
Yield back, thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that we have former CBP Chief Rodney Scott. Rodney, you get a little heartburn as you're hearing all this?
Yes.
Thanks for being here. I'll yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cloud.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for your work on this. And let me just say this, thanks for your passion on this too, because we've seen all the leftist planning and programming. They try to put it in terms of compassion, and it's anything but. It's horrific what they're doing to the lives of the migrants that are coming across, the destabilization of Central South America and all these countries that are coming across, what's happening in our communities with fentanyl and the like, and the stories you bring to this conversation are so important because it's just a horrific farce that they're trying to pull over the American people, to pull on compassionate heartstrings to try to advance such a diabolical agenda. One of the things Mayorkas claimed, we have operational control of the border, and under oath he claimed this. And to the people sitting back home, that might sound like an opinion, but that's actually a legal definition that he's supposed to be fulfilling. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I can. So you're absolutely right, Congressman. So thanks for bringing it up. The 2000 Secure Fence Act law clearly defines what operational control is. It's not left up to opinion, and it's not left up to interpretation. It's very clear, and in part it says the Secretary of DHS shall, not if he feels like it, not if he wants to, shall prevent the entry of all illegal aliens, otherwise contraband, drugs, or terrorists. That's what it says. It's very clear. And it was Chip Roy, Representative Chip Roy asked him. In fact, I watched it. He had the definition blown up right behind him, and he actually read it for the secretary, so he didn't catch him off guard, let him read it, the whole 9 yards. He asked the secretary, "Do you have operational control?" Secretary immediately said, "Yes, we have operational control." And he said it in a way like he was, indignant. In fact, he was even asked that question, right? But as I said earlier, at that moment in time, it's been a little while, at that moment in time, the secretary knew that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of known gotaways had already been recorded by his own agency, Customs and Border Protection. He knew, because he gets reports, because I know the reports he got, because I got the same reports when I was commissioner. He knew that among the 1.2 million, or that time was, I think, around 700,000 known gotaways are murderers, rapists, pedophiles. He knew about the potential illegal aliens on the FBI's terror screening database that could have been among the 1.2 million gotaways. He also knew that for every pound of narcotics that seized, tenfold get past him. I could keep going on. He knew all of that, and he still say the border's secure. In my opinion, that act alone, I don't get how with all due respect, I don't get how any congressional member can say that he should not be impeached from that one act alone. He lied to you. I mean, if as a commissioner, a CBP, if I would have lied, I would have been removed, and I should have been removed.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned too, among the Trump administration, we know the policies he put in place, but one of the big things you all did was you enforced the laws on the books, which we do not see happening right now at all. And I think the American people at first wanted to think this was some sort of accidental negligence, and we can see that it's not. Wouldn't you say? I mean, it seems to be willful, belligerent.
Oh, this is her plan. It was her plan during the presidential campaign, and the plans come together perfectly from what President Biden was wanting for this country. But I'd like to say this. I don't care, because you're media in the room, and I'm sure there's people that disagree with immigration, and is immigration not that big of a deal. Illegal immigration, not a victimless crime. People need to understand, when you cause a crisis this big that takes 70 to 80% of agents off the line, that's when the fentanyl comes across, killing Americans. That's when those suspected terrorists come across. Look, this immigration crisis has created a public safety crisis, a public health crisis, and a national security crisis. So I don't care what your opinion is on illegal immigration. This administration has put this country in danger. My biggest fear, and I said it before, is that 1.2 million people. Why didn't they turn themselves into the Border Patrol? To get fingerprinted,
Yeah.
get a free airline ticket to the city of their choice, get work authorization while they fight their case. Why
Yeah,
didn't they take
exactly.
advantage of the great giveaway program? Because they don't want to be vetted, they don't want to be fingerprinted. Look, if they arrested 151 known suspected terrorists trying to come to this country, how many of the 1.2 million? Someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America. This is a national security issue. The Secretary of Homeland Security knows it as well as I do. And I'm sick and tired of hearing, well, he works for the president gives direction. No, if he had an ounce of integrity, he would tell the White House, I cannot support this open borders plan because it's put this country at great danger. But he hasn't done it. Another reason he needs to be impeached.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, this is about whether we're going to support a legal process over an illegal process. I mean, my wife is a naturalized citizen, actually, and so we've gone through the legal process. And so this is, about getting our federal government to enforce the law.
Let me tell you what the plan is. So they created this new system, which is illegal, and they'll lose in
Right.
court for the 20 states they're suing. So now that the illegal aliens, rather than coming through the port of entry, they're going to start sneaking in again. Their play is going to be, we fixed it, and the 20 states and the Republican Party ruined it, and now the numbers are back up.
Yeah.
So they can switch the whole talking point from them creating the chaos to the other side creating the chaos.
Yeah.
There's a plan here, and again, they're implemented step by step.
I was glad to hear you bring up Canada, because one thing I think that from a geopolitical perspective, in the sense, we in the United States, we're used to freedom, safety, security, but we see Mexico becoming a narco state, and then we see our friends to the north, longtime friends to the north, become a socialist state. And could you speak to what's happening, I guess, with the cartel influence just on the other side of our borders?
It's there. I mean, here's another thing too. So this is such a great question, because I think there's a lot of Americans who, when they hear the word cartel, they think, oh, they're just in Mexico, right?
1980 street gang or something,
Exactly.
right?
That's exactly right. And that's false. The cartels are in the United States, and they're beyond the Western Hemisphere.
And very sophisticated.
That's very sophisticated. They can teach a business class at Yale, at Harvard. They're in Canada. I'll give you an example. Again, that 700% increase in the SWAT sector from just year to year over date. Well, what we're seeing now is that the Mexican citizens now are making their way to Canada to then come across. Well, how do they get there? They're not getting there by themselves, right? The cartels. They are look, I refer to the cartels as one of the most powerful, influential, sophisticated criminal organizations we have in the world. They don't just operate in Mexico. They have tentacles well beyond the Western Hemisphere, all throughout the United States and Canada. And again, Canada, I get why we focus on the southern border for obvious reasons, but all our borders are in jeopardy. The Secretary Mayorkas' refusal to uphold his oath, refusal to uphold the Constitution, refusal to uphold the laws enacted by Congress don't just affect our southern border, they impact all our borders.
And one actionable item, sir, if you could, we know the cartels are operating in all the major cities in this country. We know. And we know there's a lot of violence that isn't being associated with the cartels. And that's because of Uniform Crime Report that controlled by the FBI. There's no box to check. This was a cartel hit. This is a cartel murder. They just checked the box of murder. So we need to make a change that when the law enforcement professionals see a cartel murder, there needs to be a place to designate that in UCR so we can track the violence in America. There are hundreds of murders going on in America by cartels, but we can't prove it because we got no data on it. That can be changed in the UCR if you guys can force that.
Another quick example real quick, I know limited on time, but there was about a dozen or so attorney general, AGs that from all over the state came down the southern border, and I was there, and the AG of Oklahoma, I was really proud of the man because he was openly admitting that he didn't know some things. And I really applaud him for his courage. But he said, I just got briefed by the intelligence community that in Oklahoma, his state, that the cartels had his entire state geographically divided up into regions that they own for their drug distribution. That's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where we're at on
Yeah,
that.
you're kind of out of time.
Well extended. Thank you very much.
But I'm trying to be a little bit looser on the time. So I hadn't gone for it, so I just want to provide a couple of things. First of all, Gallup came back with an interesting poll last week. I don't know if you saw this. 800 million people adults from around the world would like to immigrate to either the U.S. or Europe. 800 million. That's up from 10 years ago when it was 150 million. This country still it remains desirable, and not just because people have good intentions. The letter that Mr. Homan, Tom mentioned, we got a response from that asking from HHS, how many kids have you lost contact with? 42,000. They've lost 42,000 children. And that's after they've made 3 attempts to find those kids, you know. So we simply don't know who they are. The vetting process is terrible for both the sponsors and for anybody coming into the country, because garbage in, garbage out, people coming in from countries. I've literally watched a group of 24, 25 young adult males tell me that at one moment they were all from Georgia. The next moment they were all from Russia. We brought in I happened to have an interpreter that we could use from my staff. They came in, and all of a sudden they're back from Georgia. It's impossible to vet because there's so many coming through. I wanted to ask a question with regard to the CBP-1 and this new parole program that's coming in. I've received reports that the United Nations, what do we call it, the Immigration Migration Office, IOM, they are working to help facilitate the implementation of that parole program south of our border, and they're working with NGOs that are actually drawing money from the U.S. taxpayers to help facilitate that. Is that anybody with, I guess Steve, Robert, Mark, Tom, whoever's got information on that?
I don't have the specifics on that, but I think that does raise the question that Congressman Rosendale raised about where's the appropriated money to fund these unauthorized programs. As Tom mentioned, I tried to emphasize what's happening with the CBP-1 app process is the institutionalization of a violation of law. This is a process that was never approved by Congress. It's an entirely new channel for admission into the U.S. And to the extent these many aliens who are registering for the process and being promised work authorizations and essentially a free pass entry into the U.S. are claiming a fear of persecution or claiming a humanitarian basis for entry, Secretary Mayorkas is using this process to circumvent Section 207, the whole refugee admissions apparatus,
right,
which is an established process authorized by Congress, coordinated with the UN and the State Department for an orderly application, a vetting, a review that has to be approved. If there is a third country that would take the refugee, they have to go to the third country before they're allowed entry into the U.S. It's an elaborate process for the safeguard of our security and sovereignty that's completely being circumvented through this now whipdash quick entry with 2 years or more of work authorization and essentially a promise when you get this free entry card that when you show up at the port of entry, you'll be escorted into the country and paroled. It's again a use of parole for a purpose that was never authorized. It's not case by case. It's not a compelling showing for an individual.
You've taken it from an individual case by case, which
Correct.
Even Mayorkas has testified that's what it's supposed to be for, and you've generalized this thing. But you've also made it a de facto amnesty, because what's going to happen, you can come in, you can work, you can be here legally. We're never going to see those folks again. That's what's going to happen. And so I've got 2 questions with regard to our oversight hearing yesterday. Number one is the statistic that they kept hanging their hat on, my colleagues across the aisle, is that 95% show up to their first court hearing. And of course, we know why they show up to the first court hearing, but how many show up to that second court hearing?
Well, look, the 90-some% may show up at court hearing, but that's at 50% actually files a case with the immigration court. A lot of people don't even file a case with the immigration court, right? For the ones that file the case in immigration court, yeah, but that's not the end game. The end game is executing the decision of the judge. So 100% can show up in court, but as I said earlier, knowing that 90% lose and like 6% leave, if the order from a federal judge isn't executed, then shut down the immigration courts too. Why are we wasting our time? If that order doesn't mean anything. So it's important that it's not about showing up in court. It's about the final decision and what happens to that final decision. In this administration, as I said, Secretary Mayorkas testified under oath that if they don't qualify for asylum, they'll be immediately removed. The question needs to be, okay, so how many is ICE found and removed? That number is pretty close to zero, gentlemen.
Yeah, that's right.
And if I could,
Yeah,
Congressman,
Steve.
to add, actually, taking off on what Tom just mentioned, Secretary Mayorkas is making the effort to eliminate the immigration judges. He's passed an interim final rule that would give asylum officers under his control the power to do direct reviews of credible fear determinations basically by themselves, by asylum officers. So asylum officers would be reviewing asylum officers' determinations of credible fear. That's a process that's supposed to be under the aegis of the Attorney General and the immigration judges. And so, again, it's almost a double rubber stamp process. And could I just make one general comment? What we've been talking about, and what we understand is going on, is not a maladministration. It is not negligence or just bad government in action. It's also not just an alternative way of interpreting the law or arguably within the range of reasonable discretion of the secretary. It's not maladministration. It's not a policy dispute we're talking about. It's a systematic, deliberate, intentional set of policies that circumvent, contravene, in fact, violate multiple provisions, really core provisions of the immigration laws that the Secretary of Homeland Security is the one charged and sworn to uphold.
Thank you. I'm going to give 2 more minutes to Mr. Good, then 2 to Mr. Rosendale, and 2 more to Mr. Cloud.
All right, I'll get right to a couple of points quickly. You wonder what loss of control looks like as would be defined by Secretary Mayorkas. But we could speculate on that, and I welcome the speculation, but when does it become a real challenge for us to regain control? So let's just say tomorrow, all of a sudden, we had an effective president that cared, and an effective Senate that cared, and we could force the right personnel with the right policies. The cartels are just going to back up and say, well, that was great while it lasted. Dang, it sucks now that the border's secured and we can't keep doing what we've been doing. How powerful and effective have they gotten to where we would have trouble regaining control again?
Yeah, so I'll take that on. 20 years of FBI, I can tell you the enterprise theory of investigation going over the cartels does not work. A.G. Barr said it best, and he agrees. What we need to do as a government is go after the cartels with the same intensity, commitment, and whole of government approach as we do terrorist organizations, number one. So we've got to change how we look at the problem and how we go after the problem. And the problem is cartels. Again, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the face of the planet, number one. Number two, though, as Tom said, I completely agree. If you pull off the Trump-era playbook and implement just some of those policies, which could be done right now with a stroke of a pen, you will impact about 70% of the problem immediately. But again, it's not going to be enough. So you're going to have to go after cartels, as I suggested. And then you've got to have a long-term strategy. You've got to pass meaningful legislation by Congress that's going to be a more expansive border security piece of legislation. And I'll give you an example of that. They love to talk about, they being this administration, how, oh, well, all the drugs come through the ports of entry, right? Well, first of all, it's a lie. They're able to, they seize more at the ports of entry because they get to stop everybody and everything coming from the port of entry. The true honest answer is we have no freaking idea, because in between the ports of entry is wide open, unsecured, unpatrolled, cartels have operational control. We have no idea what's getting through. We haven't even talked about the maritime environment. So what happens is If you beef up the ports of entry, give them a lot more technology, and you increase everything that they're seizing, guess what they're just gonna do? They're gonna shift to the wide open borders even more. And so what we have to do is pass policy, at the same time go after the cartels, and the third leg of the stool, I would say, is we've got to continue to make sure that we're given the resources, infrastructure, technology, and personnel in between the borders and at the ports of entry. It's a multi-layer strategy. If we do that, we can have an impact.
Mr. Rosedale.
Thank you, Mr. Biggs. I'm going to dive right into quick questions. Does anybody on the panel, could you give us an idea what the daily financial benefit to the cartels is? Do we have some estimates through Heritage or anybody?
I mean, I believe the estimate is about $13 billion a year, so we're talking roughly, what, $1.1 billion a month. Further divide that down, I'm not an accountant.
And that's just on the human smuggling side. That's not profits from drugs.
Okay. Which brings me to my next question, talk about money laundering. How do you guys feel that the Safe Banking Act would impact the cartel, or how would it impact the banks? Have you given any consideration to that?
Yeah, there are several laws already on the books that give us some great capabilities, like whether it's Congress or the cartels, follow the money, you'll know what they're doing and how they're doing it. So
the Safe Banking Act actually opens up the doors to allow the cash money from criminal enterprise, marijuana sales, to be going and be laundered through the banks. Do you think that the cartels would take advantage of that? How do you think it would impact them? How do you think it would impact the banks?
I think they're already taking advantage of it.
Okay. How long, let's just say tomorrow we wave a magic wand and we are able to regain operational control of the border. Okay, we implement the policies. How long do you think that it's going to take us to clean up this mess of human trafficking and drugs that has already infected our nation?
It's going to take years. I mean, our biggest year was like in FY12, we removed 409,000. We got several million in the country. But we shouldn't give a pass to that, right? When I became the ICE director, the first hearing I gave, and I took hate from the left, I said a couple things. If you're in the country illegally, you better be looking over your shoulder. It's not okay to violate the laws of this country, come across, disrespect our laws, enter the country illegally, which is a crime. It's not okay, and you shouldn't be comfortable. You should be worried that ICE is looking for you. We don't speed down the highway 120 miles an hour because you're afraid you're going to get a ticket. You don't line the taxis, you may go to prison. Well, you shouldn't be comfortable entering this country illegally, which is a crime, and feeling safe. No one's looking for you. So we'll prioritize like we did before. Again, 91% criminals. Well, look, they need to be searched out. They need to be detained. They need to be removed. Again, if you demand due process, which the left is good at doing, well, they got a right to claim asylum. They got a right to due process. Okay, but due process actually includes the courts and the final decision of the courts. If the final decision is not executed, then there is no due process, is there? So that's what we got to do. Those that issue final orders have to be arrested and deported. And what they're doing now, well, under Biden's amnesty plan, is all these family units and all these came across the last 5 or 6 years, they get amnesty. Even though they had great due process, they had great taxpayers' plans, they violated law by crossing the border, they lied under oath, which is a felony in their asylum hearing, they ignored the judge's order and became a fugitive. And we're going to reward them with amnesty. That is a no. We can't do that. If you keep rewarding illegal behavior, they're going to keep coming. So we got to stick by our guns and say we're going to secure the border. Then I'll leave it to the Congress to talk about what you want to do for immigration reform, but secure the border first. But those who violate the law need to be held accountable.
You can't think that you're going to make any progress on the interior until you secure the border first. You have to stop the bleeding, right? I mean, here's my analogy, and no analogy is perfect, but if you've gone through a hurricane and your roof was blown off and it's still raining, and you call in ServPro to clean up all your carpets and everything, and it's still raining, you have no roof. Yeah, you're not going to make much progress. I mean, you literally be living in the world of insanity. Fix your roof first, and then you can clean up the interior. It's the same thing.
I'm not sure if ServPro will appreciate that little ad you just gave them, but nonetheless. Representative Cloud.
Thank you. I have one more line of questioning I wanted to get your take on, and that is, obviously what gets a lot of attention, and in a sense rightfully so, is the fentanyl deaths. It's what's happening to the lives of the people at the hands of the cartels, the rapes, the human trafficking, all the things you mentioned. But when it comes to bringing accountability to the bad actors in our government, it seems to me we have to kind of follow the money on this. And I'm wondering to get your take on where best to do this. We about a year ago that we were looking at passing the bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security, and the talking points were like, hey, this is going to plus up border security, it's going to plus up, we need, our border patrol need raises, all those kind of things, and infrastructure at the border. And I stood up and asked the questions, and I agree with all those things. We definitely need to fund that. The problem is we write the check thinking border security, and they get the check and think, oh, more money for human trafficking. And so what are the things and the writers and all those things, the protections we need to put, the ways to get around, to stop them from getting around the money, the no bid contracts that are happening with endeavors and the like, and all that kind of.
One thing you need to do is fund detention bed with ICE. Look, the Homeland Security report I just explained to you about how many leave, and only 6%, out of the 90% lose, 6% leave, the family groups. There's another data point. If you're in detention and you get order removal, you're removed 99% of the time. That stops all this fugitive stuff. That stops the millions of dollars we spend trying to hunt these people down. Mm-hmm. That they don't build equities and have U.S. citizen kids. Now you got to do this whole family thing, separation. Right now, as you and I are speaking, there are thousands of empty ICE beds already paid for by the taxpayers, sitting empty, while we're paying NGOs $300 a night to put them in a hotel room. Yeah. So we need to make clear, in whatever legislation you guys do, is that we stop funding the NGOs that are taking care of them. I get it, but they're not in detention, which means they're on the outside. There's a reason why they are leaving these beds at ICE empty, and there's a reason why they're funding these NGOs. They don't want them to leave, and they're not in detention, not going to leave. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's fraud, waste, and abuse to spend three times more in a hotel room than an ICE detention facility. And ICE detention facilities have the highest detention standards in the industry. They got doctors, nurses, 24/7, 3 squares a day, clothes, dentists, child psychologists. They have all this stuff that we paid for, that we improved over the years, and that sets empty while you put somebody in a hotel room at $500 a night in New York City. Yeah. That needs to end. And so we need to make sure we fund ICE for detention purposes. We had 55,000 people in detention at one time on the Trump administration. Now in this administration, it's been low, it's 14,000, 16,000.
What I add that real quick, with all due respect, and I know I'm not talking to the gentleman here, but I am talking to some of your other colleagues. With all due respect, don't pass a $1.7 trillion omnibus where you actually have given the DHS hundreds of millions of dollars, where there's language in there that says, quote, it cannot be used for border security. Start there. Number two, if you do pass a bill and you're given money at DHS, restrict where money can be reprogrammed. Right now, the CBP, because I've been there as a commissioner, they have had to reprogram hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from their baseline budget, out of their operational budget, out of their enforcement budget, to provide for the care, feeding, and housing of the illegal aliens. Number two, also restrict the shell game and the Ponzi scheme that's going on right now, of which they're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to FEMA, and they're siphoning it off, giving it right to NGOs to facilitate the travel of illegal aliens to all 50 states. And the last thing I'll say is stop passing supplements, where 100% of the money that you're passing is going directly to the care and feeding and housing of illegal aliens. No, you figure that out. If this is your scheme, you pay for it. This is where, with all due respect, I know I'm going to say something that is not going to be popular even among some Republicans. But at some point, the House, you have the power of the purse. Stop funding the bleeding and this administration's willful refusal to enforce the Constitution and the laws and the books. Stop funding it, even if that means shutting down the government. I don't know what else we can do. Everything is indicated that this administration is not stopping. They're going to double down.
Congressman McCloud, if I can just, on one thing you said is very important. We need to have oversight hearings on the sole source of billions of dollars of government contracts. Sole source, I know what sole source is, using the case of emergency. We've been dealing with this crisis for 2 years. You've had plenty of time to put an RFP out and have companies bid and get the best deal for the U.S. taxpayers. There's no justification to continue doing sole sources that breaks every acquisition rule in the book. So I hope you guys look into that.
If I could just
Thank you.
briefly add,
Yeah.
you know, it's not a funding issue, it's a policy issue. If you continue to give this administration money without compelling a change of policies, you'll just be a Congress that has funded the border crisis. That's really what it boils down to.
That is-
Real quick, I want to clarify something because I know the media is going to twist this. I'm sorry, sir.
No, go
When I
ahead.
say that the money going for care and feeding, I'm not saying that we shouldn't provide care and feeding, right? That's not the point. The point is what Rob just said. We've got to stop funding it so they were shifting policies to apply consequences and deterrence so then you won't use taxpayer money to do that because the flow will stop coming. I just want to clarify that.
Well, we appreciate everybody on our distinguished panel, Mr. Homan, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Law, Mr. Bradbury. Good to see you, Rodney. Thanks for being in here today. And I appreciate the members of Congress who came over. To me, it's obvious and apparent that Secretary Mayorkas needs to be impeached. And I hope that this word gets out, and I hope if you're watching at home that you might contact your member of Congress and let them know that it's time. It's beyond time. We're in a crisis. I don't know how many years it'll take to reverse this, even if we stop tomorrow. But if we don't stop tomorrow, which I don't think we will, you're going to allow another 5 to 7 million. And I think, quite frankly, with this new CBP1 app and program that they're doing, don't be surprised if you get 10 million people in over the next 2 years. And I just don't know how we will ever reverse this unless we take immediate remedial constitutional action. And so that's why I'm grateful that you were here. Thank you for being here. And thanks for those who broadcast this. So with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
We all got lunch for